A third historic election victory or a vote marred by intimidation of rivals and the suppression of the Muslim vote. How you view India's election may well depend on where you stand politically. Narendra Modi is praising the event that's predicted to return him and his BJP party to power over 1 billion voters. 7 phases of voting, the biggest in India's history. This election was also hit by a deadly heat wave that claimed lives as temperatures soared to nearly 50 degrees Celsius. The opposition accused Modi of using the state apparatus to his campaign advantage, especially the state media, and 2 prominent opposition leaders happened to be jailed ahead of campaigning. Our correspondent Pavni Mittal sent this from New Delhi.
There's been a mixed reaction to the exit poll numbers released this weekend. Prime Minister Modi was widely believed to return for a 3rd term, but the projected scale of this victory is what has been controversial. The stock markets, as you mentioned, loving the exit poll numbers, rallying to record high. Political reactions, though, have been a little different. Opposition parties saying they're going to wait until tomorrow, that is June 4th, when the actual results are out. As far as voters and political experts are concerned, there are many who back these numbers, saying that even though there are real concerns about the economy, record unemployment and high inflation, many voters still believe that the BJP, led by Narendra Modi, is still best poised to address these issues, and many still don't see the opposition as a viable option. But there are analysts who believe that, the scale of the victory projected by these exit polls are vastly overstated, and we might see some surprises tomorrow. But thankfully, counting will begin in about 14 hours, so we will have the results, hopefully, in the next 24 hours.
Correspondent Pavni Mittal with a guarded assessment of what it is, but all other assessments seem to be saying Narendra Modi is basically in for what they call a landslide victory. Let's bring in Ashley J. Tellis, Senior Fellow at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace. Good evening to you, sir. This election, major event of massive proportions. Ought we to salute, and I think perhaps we should salute India for making this happen?
I think so. I think this is a remarkable exercise in popular democracy. And I think the outcome is going to show that Prime Minister Modi is truly a historic figure. Whether you like his politics or not, he will have gotten a 3rd term with a remarkable achievement that no Prime Minister has had before, which is he has won each successive election with a larger majority than the one before.
Our correspondent was intimating that perhaps the majority won't be as big this time, but of course time will tell. This is the great thing about it. There are, for some people though, causes for concern. What would you say about that?
I think those concerns have to be taken seriously, but given the scale of India's elections, I think this was still largely a free election, and it was probably a fair election as well. So I think there will be irregularities, but those irregularities will really be on the margins.
On that issue of fairness, there would be supporters of the likes of Arvind Kejriwal, and Rahul Gandhi who might have a different perspective on it.
I think, they have legitimate complaints. I think the Prime Minister and his party have used power in somewhat draconian ways, certainly unprecedented in India's history. But I think the bottom line still remains the same. Modi stands very tall in the Indian political pantheon, and I don't think anyone is going to claim that his victory is essentially owed to illegitimate practices.
So a 3rd historic victory. The Muslim vote, according to some, basically deleted. Is there any truth in that?
It could be. We will have to wait and see after the election results when we get constituency by constituency numbers and a more detailed scrutiny can be done. But to my mind, none of these are going to change the fundamentals, which is Modi can claim to have won this election fairly. And I think nothing is going to repudiate that basic conclusion.
When Modi was first elected on a 14-point programme, the first point of that was talking about secularism and the importance of that, and saying that basically one's nationality is one's identity, not one's religion. Now that coming from France or being in France kind of chimes with what things are supposed to be like here in France, where religion is not part of public life. However, the practice seems to be in India under Modi that if you're Hindu, everything is great, and if you're not, well, you've got a problem. So is there a sense here that there's something hypocritical in his approach?
Well, I think that was certainly the position he took prior to being elected first time around. But in the second term, he began to wear his Hindu nationalism much more transparently on his sleeve. And my expectation is that once he gets elected, and we will know the results and the magnitude of that victory tomorrow, that commitment to a more Hindu nationalist government will become even more palpable. So, in some sense, I think what Modi did was he said what was convenient to say prior to his first election. But in some ways, the real stripes of the tiger are now showing.
So a complete change from 2014. And it sounds like, reading between the lines, you're saying that if you're Muslim, or if you're Christian, you could be in for an even harder time now in India.
I suspect so. And that is certainly the way the minorities in India feel. They feel increasingly disenfranchised by Prime Minister Modi, the BJP, and the RSS in particular, which is the social organization that drives the BJP's electoral machine. And they are fearful. They are fearful for what being an Indian citizen means in a third Modi government.
Is there a sense that there is almost a cult of personality at play here with Modi?
Oh, I think that has been demonstrated remarkably over the last 10 years. That Modi has a following in India that is simply unprecedented. I mean, neither Nehru nor Indira Gandhi in decades gone by had the kind of populist following that Prime Minister Modi does. And I expect that will only intensify once the third term is underway.
We've been hearing a hint of what this might mean domestically. How about India's foreign policy under Modi? I could say more of the same, but how will that develop, do you think?
I think there will be broad continuities between what we've seen, especially in the second term. And those continuities are the following. I think his desire to make India a major world power will only receive additional impetus. The shift that he has made quite palpably towards the West and the United States in particular will also be sustained. I don't see any fundamental changes there. He has built up a very special relationship with France and with Israel. I think that relationship will also persist. And in Asia, there will be broad continuities between the strengthening ties that India has with both Japan and Australia. However, I think we might be in for a few surprises within South Asia. I expect that he will reach out towards Pakistan in the hope that he can rebuild the relations with Pakistan. And very interestingly, he offered China an olive branch in the weeks leading up to the election through an interview that he gave with Newsweek magazine. So I'm waiting to see whether, the Chinese bite on that overture and if there may be some hope for a new beginning in Sino-Indian relations.
Indeed, that would be an extremely interesting development in that case. I mean, clearly what you said about Pakistan, implications perhaps for Kashmir. You talk about the relationship with China, extremely important, thinking economically too. I'm wondering about Russia, and clearly India is a customer for Russia's oil at this present moment in time, which is something of a lifeline to Moscow. It's raised questions all the time about India's stance over Ukraine, for instance. Is that going to evolve?
I don't see that at all. There may be minor corrections, and we're already beginning to see that, for example, in the decisions India has made very recently to permit Indian companies to sell munitions to Ukraine. That has been an interesting adjustment in India's policy. But the broad drift, which you alluded to, Mark, which is India's very strong relationship with Russia, I don't see that changing anytime soon. And that is driven by bigger geopolitical considerations that are now literally etched into the fiber of India's foreign policy.
Ashley J. Tellis of the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace, Senior Fellow at that august body. Thank you, sir, for joining us and sharing your analysis of what this third historic election win, as is predicted for Narendra Modi, could mean for India and beyond. Ashley J. Tellis there with the analysis. Thank you for joining us, sir. That's it for Apropos. We have more news to come, of course, here on France 24. Do stay with us.